is good to have Bob Dolan with us too. Larry and Patty's neighbor. Patty? Ham's neighbor out there. Glad you're with us, Bob. And tell Kathy we missed her too. George mentioned about the poinsettias. If you will put 2 ice cubes in it every other day, it'll still stay fresh. You ever heard of that? 2 ice cubes. That's what we've done for 2 weeks. And they still look pretty fresh. So if you would, if you purchased a poinsettia, please take it or them home with you today. There was a study of more than 500 family counselors who came up with the top traits of successful families, and there's 9 of them. Here's the first one. The first one is communicating and then listening. Now, if you are a husband, you will understand what I'm about to say. Many husbands are multitasked, especially when it comes to hearing. We guys can be watching a football game and reading a book or the newspaper, and we can also hear our wife when she's talking to us.
Amen.
Now, I do that a lot, and my wife will come up and talk to me, and I will hear the TV, I will read my book, and I will hear what she's saying. And she will usually say something like this: Stephen! That means I'm in trouble when I get called Stephen. She said, you didn't hear a word I said. And what puts gasoline on the fire is I can quote verbatim every word she said. And that didn't go over well either. But 2 hours later, I don't remember what she said. I heard her, but I wasn't listening to her. And so I'm trying my best to learn to listen. And we need to do that with our children too. Listen to them. Sometimes we just kind of blow kids away. I found a long time ago that sometimes little children God invests in with some wisdom that parents need to hear. And they do that a lot. Another thing that Faith and I are working on, we're learning, is we may be watching a favorite TV program or doing something that we really don't want to sit down right then. So we are learning to say, is this a good time? I need to share something with you. Can you wait until the next commercial? Or can you wait till this is on? Yeah, we can do that. So we're learning to do that, and it's so important that you do that. The second thing is affirming and supporting family members. Do you know, family, you are to be a team. We all function together. We're all on the same side, do you know that? We're on the same team. And then respecting one another. Going on 24 years now as a pastor, and I've done a ton of marriage counseling. And usually when a couple comes into me, I find out the first problem that they have is they don't respect one another. You've heard me say, I had one couple not too long ago, that's been several years ago, came into my office and they said, well, can you save our marriage? Well, you know, do you want to save it? And they'll say, well, that's why we're here. We wouldn't be here otherwise. And then they'll start shooting at each other. And I remember one time I looked at a couple that were so angry with each other. I said, I want to tell you something. I want you to understand what I'm saying. I don't think Jesus could save your marriage. And boy, that got their attention. Well, Jesus can do anything, can he? And I said, yeah, if you let him. Christy, I'm getting a real loud ring out of this. It's not that Jesus can't do it, you won't let him. But don't shoot at your spouse. Don't talk down to your spouse. Treat your spouse with respect. Treat your kids with respect. Love your family. Spend time with them. And then developing a sense of trust. We really need to trust each other, don't we? That's another problem that I see is couples don't trust each other. Family members don't trust each other. Sharing time and responsibility. You hear that good old whistle sound there? There we go. Sharing time and responsibility. How important that is. Another thing I ask couples who come in, I'll say, well, when's the last time you guys went out on a date? The husband will usually look at me and say, what? I said, when's the last time you went on a date? He said, well, I'm married. We don't go on dates. You should. I tell him, you ought to take your wife out at least once a week for a date. Friday is Faith and my date. We go out to eat to a restaurant and we sit down and we communicate and listen to each other. We talk about what's going on in our life, our kids' life, our grandkids' life, our church. We communicate and we listen. It's so important that you have a date with your spouse. And then knowing right from wrong. You know, sin is still a sin, isn't it? Doesn't matter what you call it. If you know it's wrong and you do it, it's still wrong, isn't it? We need to also, parents, be teaching our kids the difference between right and wrong. Not just telling them, but by acting it out. Your kids are a lot smarter than you think they are. They watch you, and they'll know. And if you say, well, you know, don't do that, and they say, well, you do it. And sometimes we parents just kind of grin and say, well, do what I tell you, not what I do. It's sad. Don't do that. Teach them right and wrong. Having rituals and traditions was another one. It's amazing, your kids will pick up some of your traditions. My wife started a tradition that I didn't even think was a tradition, but I guess it is. When our kids were little, she would get a Santa Claus hat and she'd be underneath the tree and she'd make gifts out. Do you know, we've been at my son's house and my daughter's house and they both do that. And the grandkids are saying, I want to be Santa, let me have the hat. So if Jesus tarries and they have their own families, I think that's another tradition that will just continue on. But have some good traditions that your kids can pick up on. And then sharing a religious core. Don't just take your kids to church and drop them off. Stay with them. Be there in church. Let them realize how important church is and how important God is. One of the saddest things that happens when we just bring our kids to church and drop them off, we're teaching a very important lesson to our kids. Church is for kids. So when you become an adult, you don't have to go to church. Don't set that example out. Be there. Take them there. And the last one, the ninth one, was respecting of privacy. I don't know why, but when my kids were both home, they'd go in their room and they'd shut their door. I don't know. They just didn't. They wanted to be private. And you know, we didn't go in there just open the door and walk in. We'd knock on the door. Respect each other's privacy. There are times that we need that. Well, I want to talk to you this morning about Mary and Joseph. Why was a Christ child born to them? What was so different about them? Well, let me ask you a question. If God were looking for a home in which His Son would come, would your home be suitable? Is there enough love in your home? Is there enough commitment to God in your home? Does your home have a godly atmosphere in these areas? A healthy relationship with other people. Personal discipline in the things that matter the most.